Good afternoon, everybody, and thanks for joining in. There are more than 10-12 people so far, and hopefully others should join in. My name is Advait Purlekar. I am an alumni of SPJIMR Institute of Management and Research, our beloved institute. I passed out not long ago, maybe in 1993. So maybe depending on who you are, very long ago, or depending on who you are, not so long ago. And I'm going to share my views on the whole topic of strategy and its relevance or otherwise in today's irreverent times. Feel free to ask any questions that comes in your mind in case there's something that you do not understand what I've said or what you've seen, or you do not necessarily agree with what I've been saying. Feel free to pop up a question, and I'll try and answer to the best of my ability. So the quick introduction on who we are. I run a boutique management consulting company based in Pune called Alumni, and we work among other areas in strategy, in process, in HR, and basically try and create what we call real measurable impact with our clients. So as a consulting company, yes, we do offer insights, but in today's world, insights without implementation has little value, and therefore more and more of our work is insights coupled with implementation. Like I said, we work with clients in a couple of areas, what we call unearthing strategy, and that's something I'm trying to do today as well, not for a specific kind of corporate or client, but unearthing the whole subject of strategy. I do teach strategy at different business schools in India and abroad, and that's a topic I'm sort of fond of and I'm passionate about, and hopefully I'll share that passion with all of you today. So we work with clients in unearthing their strategy. The reason why we are calling it unearthing is because very rarely we can go to a client and say, hey, you don't have a strategy, let us tell you what your strategy should be. So it's more of discovery rather than invention, and therefore it's unearthing strategy. There's a very famous framework called the Balanced Scorecard framework that we have been successfully using to work with our clients on the area of strategy. The other area is unlocking business processes, unlocking value through improvement in efficiency and effectiveness in which our clients operate their businesses, leading to SOPs, standard operating processes, or best practice documentation. Third area is uniting human capital, ensuring that there is perfect harmony and alignment between people and its organization to deliver outstanding performance. So entire gamut of HR consulting space is where we operate in. We also work with clients in helping them uplift their decision making. We do certain things based on which clients hopefully say, yes, I know. Either it as a prelude to strategy, it means a market study or a market assessment study or an industry assessment study, a little bit of mining of data, or pure simple surveys in terms of voice of customers or voice of employees. And last but not the least, we end up training some of our client contacts on whether they are first-time managers or management development programs, leadership development programs, so on and so forth. In the strategy space, over the last now 25 years, I would have done more than 350 engagements for a large number of clients, both in India as well as abroad. Fortunately, while we have chosen to be based in Pune, that has not stopped us from doing consulting work, actual consulting on-site work in different parts of the world that you can see on the screen, right from more actively in Africa, in Middle East, in India, Southeast Asia, right up to Hong Kong. This is just to give a quick feel in terms of what kind of clients that we've been working with. I won't be surprised if some of you are in any of these client organizations that we work, and if we've not met, I look forward to meeting you when I bump into you in any of these clients. Okay, so that's a quick introduction of who I am and what kind of work I've been doing post-SP. And now to the, if I have to talk on strategy, which is likely a very serious subject, I thought I'll start on a lighter note. Hope all of you or many of you are followers or fans of Dilbert, the cartoon strip. And I just want to share this interesting clip that I came across on the net, which talks about strategy and how very liberally everybody uses the word strategy Everybody has their own interpretation of what this word strategy means, and it's nice to sort of use that word, spatter the conversation with that word strategy so that you appear to be knowledgeable, kind of thing. That's again on a lighter note. So, but more importantly, like this famous folklore tells us about those 6 or 7 blind men and the elephant. In the matter of strategy, in the subject of strategy, I have experienced that people are actually behave like these blind men. Few people think, everybody has their own interpretation of the word strategy, what it means, objectives, goals, semantics differ, targets, initiatives, actions, plans. It's exactly like those 6 blind men and the elephant. So somebody thinks it's a rope, somebody thinks it's a ball, fan, trees, snakes, spear, so on and so forth, and maybe there could be more interpretations to each of these. So we need to be very clear what this entire subject of strategy is, and that's what we are trying to understand and the relevance of it in today's relevant times. So given that it is a much abused word, not exactly, people are not on the same page as far as the definition, the understanding, the interpretation of that word is. Unfortunately, in my view, and I'm making a bold statement here, the word strategy has actually been flogged to death relentlessly. And therefore, I'm showing you a tombstone which says your life strategy, and nobody really cared what it meant. So does this really mean that in today's world, strategy is no longer relevant? Does it mean that, people should stop teaching strategy in business schools? We should stop reading books about strategy? We should stop reading articles about strategy? Obviously, no. It doesn't mean that strategy is dead. It's just reincarnation of strategy. We need to understand a different part of strategy is still there, and we just need to understand how different it means in today's world. So, thanks to strategy, and I'll come back to a slide I switched off. Thanks to lovely strategies that large number of Fortune 500 companies have had over the last so many years. Strategy is the ladder to success. Success means growth. Success means revenues. Success means profits. Success means variety of financial and non-financial metrics. And companies have grown, companies have survived. But as you can see from the slide here, in recent times, just because you have a great strategy, it is no guarantee for longevity. Because again, it's a question of going back to what I've been saying. It's a question of what is your own interpretation of strategy and what is your own strategy, and are you ready for it, and is the strategy ready for you? So if you look at some statistics here, nearly 90% of the original Fortune 500 companies are not even in business today. And when you say these were Fortune 500 companies, obviously these were the top 500 most successful, largest kind of companies in the world. But 90% of those companies don't even exist today. They are no longer in business today. So what happened to their strategy? Half of the companies in the last 15, 16 years that were part of Fortune 500 companies are gone. So 50% of this churn, 50% of this turnover, 52 to be precise, out of that 88 has happened in the last 15, 17 years. And more importantly, 40% of today's Fortune 500 companies may not even exist in the next 10 years. And again, these have been always touted to be the largest, most successful, and obviously companies that have a good strategy, and that's what has led to them to become the largest in their field. Given this, closer home, you can see that many of these companies, many of these brands that you can see, either are not there today or they are actually gone down the drain. They were, a very fade kind of image of their brilliant past. Right at the center is the strategy guru and his strategy consulting company called Monitor Group. Unfortunately, the world acclaimed guru that he is running a consulting company is a business, and unfortunately for a variety of reasons, that company, strategy consulting company from the strategy guru, Tom Peters, actually had to shut shop. So just by having a clear understanding of what that strategy is, not changing that understanding of what that strategy is, has led to the downfall of many of these kind of companies. For people who are close to my vintage, I don't know how many of you are that old, you might remember brands like Agrawal classes and brilliant tutorials if you were pursuing IIT kind of thing at that point in time. Otherwise, for the younger ones, even the eSpace kind of thing, the World Space, Local Banya, Planet M, 70mm, all these are relatively new brands who have obviously, you don't see them around here. Old brands, old economy companies, new economy companies, all obviously had some strategy right, but obviously that strategy doesn't seem to have worked well in the long run. And big companies, global brands, well-known brands, obviously you can see what has happened to them. Yes, I agree, Volkswagen today is still the world's largest car maker as a group, but you all know what happened with the emissions fiasco and the emission scam that we had last year. Kodak, Nokia, Dell, Yahoo are all well-known examples. There are case studies enough and around all over the business schools which talk about the the demise and the reasons for the demise of such great behemoths in the corporate world. So, world is mired in uncertainty. There could be several reasons for it. There could be what they call Modi effect, or what's happening in the commodities world, be it oil, be it steel, be it copper, be it aluminium, although copper and aluminium are recovering currently. It could be challenges in terms of growth rates of economies. It could be the geopolitical crisis, or of course, it could be the governments and the people who are heading different governments as well, without taking names. So there are several challenges that companies face, and there are several challenges that need to get incorporated in the strategic thought process, in the strategic planning process, and we need to be aware, take cognizance of these challenges. Some of these could be positive for you, some of these could be not so positive for you, but it's a question of how adaptive, how flexible, how agile your strategic planning process is, and your own interpretation of what strategy means for you is. That will go a long way in ensuring that you don't follow the path that you've seen of some of the brands and the companies in the previous two slides. So the question is the sun really setting upon strategy? Is strategy dead, or is it the dawn of a new era? So is it really dead, or are we looking, or are we forced to look at strategy from a different perspective? That's the question that I want to talk about, and I would be happy to have any of your views as well. So as they say, if strategy is dead, I would say long live strategy, RIP, rest in peace. But more importantly, it is not RIP as in rest in peace. I would say it's RIP as in resurrection in progress. So strategy is not dead. As you can see, the way we have coined the word strategy, you've used different symbols there. Obviously, it needs to adapt to the modern world. Obviously, it needs to adapt to the change that is happening, the changing external environment that is happening. And when we say change has to be in terms of your own strategy for your companies, but more importantly, your own understanding of what strategy means. So you have to change, and your strategy also has to change. You have to be ready for the strategy, but very importantly, your strategy also has to be ready for you. I'm just sharing most recent survey. We do these surveys with our clients and our contact network. Survey of CXOs, CEOs and one level below across different organizations across our network, largely on the business outlook. And as you can see from the first graph on the left, how valuable is your strategic planning process? I think a good chunk of the respondents, nearly 60–70% of them are saying it is extremely or very valuable. So strategy, when we say RIP, It is not rest in peace, it is resurrection in progress. The second graph always intrigues me because we've seen a big change over the years in the kind of responses we are getting for the second question that we normally have. And increasingly, we are seeing the no part getting stronger and stronger over the years, which means strategy, what was done, and normally people talk of when this strategy typically in today's times is 3 to 5 years. If it is 3 years, it is typically 1 plus 2 years kind of plan. And even that needs to get, it seems that people are saying that that is changing every year more often than not. And is your industry going to fundamentally change? Again, a huge possibility, a huge chunk of the respondents are saying that, yeah, there's a distinct possibility, there's a high possibility that the industry is bound to change. So obviously we are living in a very different world than what we were in the past. So what's this strategy 2.0? What are we saying? It's a different version of strategy. It's a different interpretation of strategy. It's a different understanding of the meaning of what the word strategy. It's a question of if the world is changing around you, the whole concept of strategy is changing around you, and are we listening? So what are the 4 key important things that are happening? It's a nice little word called disruption. In fact, we have a client, one of the world leaders in media and communication, an ad agency called TBWA, and they actually have a practice and they run workshops for their clients, which are typically media and communication, so they're marketing clients, and they run a workshop called Disruption Workshop, which essentially means they're talking of what are the disruptive forces that operate in any market, in any industry that you operate in. And the world around is disruptive. It's more of revolution and less of evolution. And that's the rate of pace of change that we're looking at when we operate in today's business environment. The second there is, just because something worked in the past, it is no guarantee that it will work in the future. So there's no point talking about what I see in the rear view mirror. Most of us would be driving cars, and every car has a rear view mirror. Is it important? Yes, it is. Can we afford to drive our car looking only at the rear view mirror? Obviously no. Very quickly we'll dash the car somewhere. So rear view mirror is important, but what is more important is the dashboard that is in front of you. And therefore rear view mirror cannot have, just because it worked in the past, there's no guarantee, like I said, that it will work in the future. And therefore we have to be very careful that it has its own place, it has its own importance, but that is not the be all and end all of, your past performance is no guarantee of your future performance. It might help you understand what it is, but again, it is no guarantee in terms of what's happening. Third is, it looks as if those two people are, playing the issue of hands kind of thing. Obviously, it's not. It's a show of strength. You have competitors yesterday. They could be potential partners tomorrow. So obviously, all of us might be aware, many of us might be aware, the new word that is being coined is co-opetition. Can you collaborate with your competition? I'll give you a simple example of cricket. Let's look at IPL, for example, which is one of the most successful brands of cricket. Virat Kohli and AB de Villiers might be playing in a India versus South Africa test match as opposing, sometimes captains or sometimes players, but they are part of the same team when it comes to Royal Challengers. So yesterday's competition in a different format, in a different game, in a different setting is actually your colleague, and therefore you need to collaborate with the same person whom you sort of fiercely fought just previous week. And that's a perfect example of co-opetition. Fourth is about information overload. In my times, when I passed out of SPJIMR and started my consulting career, knowledge was power. Anybody who had more knowledge was obviously the guru, most powerful, most dynamic, and that was a critical success factor in terms of your career path. Today, thanks to Google and many such things, knowledge has got democratized to the extent that, like they say, there is information overload. You'll end up in analysis paralysis. So how do you use that knowledge? How do you sort of differentiate between voice and sound and noise. That's the skill that you need in today's world when you're looking at strategy. There are so many things happening that are disruptive in nature. You have all the analytics based on your past performance. You have a challenge that your competition yesterday could be a potential collaborator tomorrow. And you don't even know who those collaborators could be. You don't even know who that competition could be. And of course, there's too much of information for you to digest, to analyze. You might have the best of analytical tools, BI tools, predictive analysis, so on and so forth. Yet you need to make good, meaningful insight. And all these insights need to have real, measurable impact as far as your strategic planning is concerned and your implementation is concerned. So all of us have, I'm sure, have heard of this concept of VUCA and today's VUCA world. And many of you would know, all of us would know what VUCA means. And we've heard of this acronym. Some of you might remember that VUCA actually means volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous world. And that's what the world is today, and that's what some of the slides that we've seen talk about. But when we're talking of strategy in this VUCA world, and when I say strategy is dead and long-lived strategy, and RIP is not rest in peace, but resurrection in progress, in today's VUCA world, we just have to adapt a new definition of the same acronym VUCA. From a strategic perspective, then V is not volatile. In that volatile world, you still have to have that vision. You cannot sort of digress from that vision even if there are choppy waters outside. And that V in today's VUCA world is volatile. V in today's strategy 2.0 is vision. U is uncertain in the VUCA world. U is understanding what your strategy is. Knowing your strategy and understanding your strategy are different things. Understanding is understanding the impact, understanding the interrelationship between different parameters of your strategy. So yes, U in VUCA world is uncertainty, but the U in strategy 2.0 is understanding that uncertainty. C in VUCA world is complex. World is increasingly becoming more and more complex. Our conversations are becoming more complex. Our communication is becoming complex. Our business obviously is becoming more complex. But C in strategy 2.0 is having clarity in spite of the complexity around. Being very clear in terms of what you want to do, what your strategy exactly is, and not getting mired, not getting bogged down by, not getting overawed by the complexity around you. A in a VUCA world is ambiguity, ambiguous. A in strategy 2.0 is being agile, being flexible, being modular, being scalable. Nothing is cast in stone. Just because, again, going back to that rearview mirror, just because it worked yesterday, there is no guarantee it is going to work today, and it is definitely not going to work tomorrow. So being agile is what the success is going to be. So VUCA, yes, VUCA world, but strategy 2.0 VUCA is having a vision, having an understanding of your strategy, having clarity in terms of your path forward, and being agile always. That's my new definition of VUCA for strategy 2.0. Having said that, many of you are working in different companies, different industries, different geographies, I'm assuming that, and therefore you operate in different market and business environment. And therefore, like we have the 4 P's of marketing, there could be 4 or 5 P's in terms of strategy. It could be just a basic plan, what is my intended course of action, it's a very conscious chosen path. It could mean a stream of consistent behaviors. It could mean how I position myself in terms of the environment. And as we'll see later, we talk about sustainable competitive advantage versus something else that I'm going to talk about. It could mean having a different perspective on the way things operate, the way things behave, the business environment around you, and having specific ploys or maneuvers to outwit your competitors. At the end of the day, you operate in an insulated environment. Competitors are there. Some of them could be potential collaborators. Yes, we agreed. But not everybody need not be your potential collaborators. You need to outwit your competitors if you have to move forward. And like they say, in spite of all this strategy 2.0, new understanding of VUCA, 4 Ps, 5 Ps, etc., etc., you always need to have a contingency plan. Like they say, if plan A doesn't work, on a lighter note, thankfully there are 25 more alphabets. And these are some of the examples where businesses have adopted themselves to survive and grow. Many of you, all of us, I'm sure, are using Paytm, and their ad and their catchline Paytm Karo is very, very popular. But many of you may not remember, not long ago, Paytm started off as a mobile recharge kind of company, like MobiKwik and many recharge and anybody else. Now, Paytm, of course, is a mall. You can buy so many things out of Paytm. It's a payment network, and of course, recently they've started a Paytm bank as well, payment bank. So they've adopted, plan A didn't work really well for them. They went to plan B. Plan B worked or not worked. They had something more up their sleeve. Look at Snapdeal. Look at Twitter. Snapdeal again started off as a coupon kind of company, Groupon kind of company. Now, of course, they are one of the larger e-tailing companies that we know of, and everybody knows about the whole thing between Flipkart and Snapdeal. So Redbus, one more example, started off as a B2B company, more like a mini ERP for fleet operators, and now largely, as we know them as customers of Redbus, it's a B2C company. So again, Zappos is one example that is given internationally as well. So leadership models, again, I'm sharing a cartoon here. Somebody's asking leadership experience. He says, hey, I have 13 followers on Twitter, so I'm a leader for them. But leadership models have changed. Now people increasingly are talking of what is called situational leadership. Following on the same path, I have a separate kind of take on it. If there can be situational leadership, then obviously you can have situation strategy, because situational leadership needs situational strategy. And that would be a new form of strategy. That's the strategy 2.0 that we are talking of. So this situational strategy, this strategy 2.0, how is it different from the traditional mindset of strategy and what we might have read and practiced perhaps, read in business schools and practiced perhaps in our corporate world? First and foremost, the most important part is the time horizon. I remember passing out of SP, I joined a consulting company called A.F. Ferguson & Company, which was at that point in time India's largest independent consulting company. And we used to work on market entry strategies for, Indian economy 91, 92 was opening up for multinational companies, and therefore we ended up working with large number of multinational companies in their India entry strategies. In 92, 93, we used to work on strategies and business plans for 2005, 2010, 2020. So it was like nearly 20, 25 years into the future. As I speak now with some of my clients whom we work today in 2017, I still talk of 2020 only. And I'm lesser confident about what I'm recommending for my clients in 2020, in 2017 than what we were recommending as a leading consulting company way back in 92, 93 for Vision 2020. And that's the rate of change that has happened. And that's the entire crashing of timeline in terms of what this strategy is about. So we used to have short-term, medium-term, and long-term strategy. Now I've coined a word called immediate-term, near-term, and short-term strategy. There's nothing called medium-term, long-term. You still are happy to use the word long-term, then the definition of what long is has to change. It was much more template and process-driven. It was much more what I call left brain oriented, analytical. You have data, you analyze. We didn't have internet at that point in time. So we used to sort of look into newspaper articles and business press articles, cut them, photocopy them, file them, read them, reread them, analyze them. So it was all data collection, predictive, economic models for 15, 20 years, template and process driven. Today it is emergent. Today it is experiential. Today it is recognizing patterns. Today it is what I'm calling situational competitive advantage. So the same marketing group talked of sustainable competitive advantage. Today's time, it is no longer sustainable, it has to be situational competitive advantage. To use a modern concept, it's more of design thinking today. For people from the IT background, no longer waterfall, the agile way of looking at things. And that's the big change when we're looking at traditional strategic planning versus strategy 2.0, or what we're calling in today's VUCA world. So, in my view, the shelf life or the half-life of what strategy is has dramatically come down. But again, let me warn you that therefore strategy has not been now, basically doesn't mean strategy means tactics. Even in today's world, even in this short-term, near-term, immediate-term kind of world, tactics are tactics and strategy is strategy. Which means if you've crashed the timeline, just to use the the modern technological word, the aspect ratio of our imaging has not changed. That has remained same. What it means is that if 10 years ago, 20 years ago, it was okay to take 3, 4, 5 months to strategize because the period of strategy was 5 years, 7 years, 10 years, but you have to go through all those motions. That point in time, as we saw on the previous slide, perhaps in a linear way. In today's times, in today's design thinking times, in today's agile times, some of that may be parallel activities, but most importantly, we don't have the luxury of working on a strategy for our own companies for 3, 4, 5 months, because the strategy itself is maybe 1 + 2 years. So you can't take 3 months and 4 months to come out with a strategy for the next 8 months. However, you have to go through that process. So first principles about strategy are still the same, and that's why I'm using the word aspect ratio. When you are crashing the timeline, when you're reducing the size of that image, the picture of your strategy, your aspect ratio in terms of the width versus length, just to give that analogy, that has not changed. Picture is not getting distorted because you're reducing the size of the picture. Strategic planning, the process that you're following, largely first principles would remain same. Like I said, if some things were happening one after the other in a linear way, in today's times, it has to be parallelly. It is far less iterative than it was before because it is much more collaborative and inclusive. Before, strategy was devised in boardrooms. Today, it is also devised. Field people also get involved in the strategy. I'll just share a simple example from one of our clients. And when we do work with strategy with our clients, of course, we talk to the board people, the owners, the directors, the senior people, etc., etc. But we also want to talk to the field people who are selling whatever the product or service of our client is on the field. If it's a manufacturing client, we would like to talk to people on the plant as well. And in one of such things, and the clients normally are not very happy that strategy is so confidential, and it's very thought process and it has to come from the highest levels. It has to be top down. And why do we want to talk to people at the plant? But thanks to our persistence, one of our clients actually agreed, and we actually did a communication kind of workshop, or a outside-in kind of workshop with our clients at a plant. And one of the workers actually stood up and he said in the vernacular, saying that, "Saab, मैं ये कंपनी में 17 साल से काम कर रहा हूँ, आपने मेरा खाली हाथ मांगा है, आज पहली बार आप दिमाग मांग रहे हैं." And it was such a eye-opener for me that this is a worker, a blue-collar worker, who is actually seeing merit in what is happening, and he's saying that all along for the last 15, 17 years, you only asked for my brawn power. For the first time, you're asking for my brain power, and you're recognizing that I might have something to add value to your thought process. And that one statement made by one worker in this company changed the entire outlook of the management in terms of what needs to be done. So it's more of collaborative, definitely much, much more inclusive than what it was. And therefore, because it is collaborative, because it is inclusive, it need not be as iterative as it was earlier. So the question is, It's not, the question is whether you are ready for your strategy. Question is whether strategy is ready for you. Are you still looking from a strategic myopia kind of perspective? Do you still have the old idea of what the strategy is? Do you need to change your old rules? Do you need to change your old habits? Do you need to rejig this understanding of what this concept is? And are you clear that it is not the best thoughts that will take you forward, but it's a question of how quick you are in terms of responsive to that change? So it's a different view, different version of what strategy is all about. And like I said, you can never go away from the first principles in terms of the strategic planning process. You have to have that analysis. You have to move from insights to implementation. And the journey you take is how quickly and how reliably you move from data to information to knowledge to wisdom, and more importantly, apply that wisdom when you're thinking of strategy. So utilize that wisdom. In fact, the name of my consulting company, Apohan, essentially means applied wisdom. So how do you quickly traverse from data to information to knowledge to wisdom, and more importantly, apply that wisdom in your situation when you're looking at strategy? So yes, holistic strategy, comprehensive strategy, detailing out the strategy is important, but let's not get confused with what is normally called a POV, which is point of view. Point of view is inherently, it's based on experience, but there is a good amount of gut feel that is inherent in that point of view. Whereas a holistic, comprehensive, balanced strategy is more in terms of the first principles, more in terms of the data, the analysis, the predictive and the prescriptive part of that analysis. Less of point of view, less of gut feel, less of I say so, because I say so kind of approach, and more in terms of the analytical capabilities that you have. So like I said earlier, it's nice to know what the strategy is, but more importantly, it is more important to understand what your strategy is. And there's a big difference between knowing and understanding. And the understanding, the journey is being aware, being understanding, being implementing, and then being able to improve on that thought process. So awareness, understand, implement, and improve is that journey that is very important when you are looking at strategy. And knowing strategy is just the awareness of your strategy. You may or may not have participated in that strategy, and knowing is just knowing the language of the strategy. Understanding is understanding what the strategy is, how it would impact the business, how would it impact the company, how would it impact your role, and how does that change going forward. So that's the key. Let's look at a couple of examples of companies who've been disruptive, who've not looked at that rearview mirror too seriously, who've sometimes collaborated and changed the entire paradigm of what competition is, and who've used knowledge to their own advantage. First example is a company, it's actually an Israeli company called Nano Dimension. It is a publicly listed company. It has a market cap, last known was close to more than upwards of $50 million. It got a funding of $18 million through IPO, but it neither has a product nor has revenue. Obviously, it doesn't have any profit. So what did it do? It used the term what is called reverse merger. The company is in nanotechnology, 3D printing kind of space. It used reverse merger. It reverse merged with a publicly listed company on Tel Aviv Stock Exchange, and suddenly it got the funding it required. Suddenly it got the traction it required, and out of nowhere, its market cap, like I said, is 3 times the investment it made into that company. Siroda, closer home, first discount broking house, and free kind of free trade kind of model. So obviously very disruptive in this entire broking space, in equity space in India, created a new kind of positioning for itself, become successful from nowhere. OnePlus, now of course we're talking about OnePlus 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Chinese smartphone manufacturer totally redefined what mobile phones are, how are they marketed, how are they distributed. So, changed, opened eyes for many established marketers in India as well. AIB, I don't want to talk too much about them, don't want to create any further controversy, but yeah, of course, they're online content creators. They're revolutionizing how people look at it, look at media, look at information, look at how they want to access information, and those part of it. I mean, a couple of more examples is, for example, Uber Eats. You had restaurants, then, for better customer service, many of the restaurants started, say, home delivery. Then came the Zomatos of the world. They said, okay, let me give you all the information that you want about restaurants, menu cards, and then let me start delivery themselves. So, then suddenly their model changed, the home delivery model of normal restaurants changed. Then came the Swiggies of the world. Again, business model in terms of the delivery. Before that, there was a dial-a-meal concept, so I could sit at home and order different dishes from different restaurants and get them delivered at home. Then came Swiggy, and now it's Uber Eats, where they are saying, okay, anyway, our vehicles zipping across towns, and can we use them more effectively and deliver food? So it's very different in terms of how disruptive one can be. And it's not just the new economy companies that are disrupting and creating their own different interpretations of what their strategy should be, adopting their strategies to suit the new business environment. Netflix started off as a video rental kind of company. Now, of course, is one of the larger net streaming companies, video streaming companies, and they're creating their own content now. Nintendo, yes, spectacular growth, then drop, a resurrection again in terms of their strategy and their growth from a has-been company, and now it's a good name as far as family gaming is concerned. National Geographic, compare it with another print kind of behemoth, Reader's Digest. For some people who know Reader's Digest, you can't find Reader's Digest now. National Geographic is still up and running, very successful. They've combined technology, new old economy and old economy very, very well. Domino's, US, of course, very much in India as well, our client in India. But they were honest when they realized that, the only value proposition they seem to have, and it used to be their tagline as well, that we are pizza delivery experts. And while focusing on the pizza delivery 30-minute or free kind of concept, they didn't invest that much in the product per se. So they were delivering pizzas fast and within 30 minutes, but the pizzas were not good. So they actually were honest. They came out with campaigns saying that yes, we've realized our pizzas are not good, and they transformed their strategy. They invested much into product, in the commissaries, in the kitchen, and of course now it's a success story. Last but not the least, I have penned down some 7 what I call deadly sins of strategizing, myths of strategizing, one may call it. There's this famous story, and of course, it's been in news since yesterday, of course, Narayan Murthy and Vishal Sikka, and there's famous story on Narayan Murthy about how he was standing in his corner room office in Infosys in Bangalore campus, evening 5:30, and he saw thousands of people driving out of the campus, and the famous quote, I don't know whether the story is true or not, but this quote has been attributed to him, saying that people are my biggest competitive advantage, and this is my assets that are walking out, and I'm not sure how many of those assets would walk in today again tomorrow morning at 9:30. And we know what has happened to the biggest asset. Yesterday, a lot of news on that yesterday, and especially today's papers. Everybody knows about it. So only the second is, like I said, who should get involved in the strategic planning, who can contribute. Traditional knowledge and traditional wisdom would be that yes, it's more about senior management people, CEOs, board, CXOs, etc., etc. That may not be necessarily true. You have to have your ear to the ground and ensure that people from the field, people from the middle and junior levels also get a shout. Strategy can't be based on the product life cycle of whatever products or services you have. Strategy is far beyond that. Products can come and go, products will die. That doesn't mean company dies as long as your strategy is not married to only one product or two products. It's good copy to say that, I'd rather worry about my customers than my competitors. Yes, great. Of course, you have to worry about your customers. But again, let's be clear that you're not living in an insulated world. What customers do, can you predict some of that? What is their game plan? How do you adapt to it? That is again important. You cannot totally ignore competition. Customers are important. They give you money. But if you ignore competition, then even customers won't come to you. Strategy, of course, is very, very confidential. It is no longer a boardroom thing, so it's confidential. But confidential from whom? Confidential from your competitors, perhaps. Not confidential from the people who you need to implement your strategy. So obviously, it has to get divulged, bits and pieces of it, to the people who need to implement that strategy. Low cost is the key to our strategy. Yes, works sometimes in commodity market. Vedanta Group is one good example of that. Tata Steel is another example of that. But low cost cannot be the only part of your strategy. It can't be a unilinear kind of strategy. There have to be other aspects of the strategy. And similarly, like product, like cost, brand cannot be the only be-all and end-all of the strategy. Brand is one aspect of the strategy, but you need to think beyond brand, beyond product, beyond cost. And like I said, alignment of people, alignment of organizational goals and individual expectations is critical, what we call performance partnership. Partnership between the organization and its senior level people to deliver outstanding performance. That again is a keystone for successful strategy 2.0. Last slide from our side, the support from Mike Tyson. Everybody has a plan until they get punched in the face. So ensure that you don't get punched in the face. You need to plan, but you need to be also aware, not just about your customers, about your competition as well. All strategies are wrong and all models are flawed unless proven otherwise. It's like you're innocent unless proven guilty. So that brings me to the end of my presentation. Thank you. Thanks for being patient. Many of you have been still stuck around. I'll be more than happy to ask any questions if in case somebody has. Thank you. Any questions? Okay, there's a question from Rajarshi Chatterjee. In today's era, many companies are just copying strategy of competitors and succeeding as well. Walmart is the best example of that. Any thoughts? Well, it's a question of what do you mean by copying? If somebody, because Walmart, if you look at Walmart and Amazon, they're actually on the opposite ends and they're trying to meet in between. Walmart, pure play retailer, trying to get into the electronic space. Amazon, pure play e-tailer, trying to get into the brick and mortar space. So neither of them are copying each other. They are actually expanding their channels, expanding their portfolio. They are actually realizing that old strategy is not going to help either for Walmart nor for Amazon, and therefore they need to ensure that, if you are just a pure play brick and mortar, you need to have clicks. If you are only click, you need to have brick and mortar. So that is what is happening in the Walmart and Amazon kind of example. There's, I hope I've answered your question. There's, okay, there's one more question from Sunil Bhardwaj. Is the balance scorecard the best approach for strategic planning? I think it is, yes, but I admit my view is biased because I'm a huge practitioner of balance scorecard. But beyond that bias, the reason why I'm saying yes is because of the very definition of what balancing is. I mean, balance scorecard is not a new concept. It has been there since now 1991, so 25, 26 years. Many of the other concepts have come and gone, what people often call management fads. But balance scorecard is still there, and it is still the most popular, one of the most popular management frameworks that has lived for so long, if I can use that word. And it is because of the nature of it. It is, it has those 4 perspectives of finance, customer, process, and people. And there have been many articles and many books that there should be only 3, there should be 5, there should be 7 perspectives. But at the end of the day, people have still boiled down to 4. And if you look at first version of balance scorecard vis-a-vis what is being practiced today, inherently there has not been a significant change in the thought process. Of course, there are other tools. You could have EVA, you could have so many other tools that can be used for strategizing. Last known, there was 72 tools for understanding strategy. Porter's 5 forces are there, and internal assessment, SWOT, Pestle, so on and so forth. But I still would think that this is one among the more robust, long-standing kind of tools. Sambit Sarangi is asking a question: how do we go about thinking along the lines of disruption? Interesting question. First and foremost, before you start thinking about disruption, it's going back to strategy. Before you start thinking of strategy and disrupting the business model, you need to be very clear in terms of where you stand today. What is typically called a current state assessment, CSA as we call it in our consulting acronym world. So you need to be very clear where you are today, so that then you can know what you want to disrupt. Again, going back to earlier question, blue ocean strategy is one very disruptive tool or framework that is used. So that should help you. One more question along that is how to think disruptively and in an anti-fragile way. I hope I've answered both these questions in a way that first and foremost, have a clear understanding of where you are. Be very clear in terms of what you want to disrupt, because you should not disrupt like they say, if it ain't broke, why fix it kind of thing. But you use other frameworks as well, like I said, the blue ocean thing, blue ocean strategy, or design thinking. Again, is very disruptive because it changes the entire mindset. And there you go. I hope Sunil and Sambit, I've answered your questions. Thank you. Any more questions? Thanks, Sunil and Sambit, for confirming that I have answered your questions. Feel free to connect with me offline, online. You can see my email ID advait@account.com or my mobile number 98500 86404. Okay, thank you so much and hope you enjoyed.